I am Mark Puremix Content Manager, joined today by Eric Sarafin. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for joining us today. It's going to be pretty
Yeah.
fun. So, so we're going to do a little bit of a different format today than everybody's used to. So normally we do a bunch of pre-submitted questions and stuff. Today we're going to do kind of like an interview style, and then at the end we're going to field questions from the YouTube chat room. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. Eric's a very accomplished producer, engineer, mixer, and also author of several books that have done really well. And I guess, cool thing to do would just be to start at the beginning and talk about how you got into music.
Oh man,
Yeah.
going way back.
Way back.
Music probably when I first started playing piano at 6.
Yeah.
And I guess my mom had to prod me to practice, but by the time I got into high school, I was pretty good and like Chopin, and I was in the marching band. I played trumpet, piano, and a guy came to Berklee College of Music to our band and asked who wanted a career in music. And so I'm like, well, I'd like a career in music. So I went and heard his spiel. Ended up going to Rutgers for a year, studied with Kenny Barron, who's a very well-known straight-ahead jazz pianist. And then I went to Berklee the next year because I realized I wasn't going to be a jazz piano player. And so Berklee was interesting. I went there for 2.5 years. I kind of changed my major and took the classes that I wanted to take. I knew what I wanted to take, and that's what I did. And I got myself into a really good situation there, though, because I ended up living above the 24-track recording studio where George Thorogood's records were done. Mm-hmm. And so that opportunity place, and I had full access to it, and I could bring anybody in anytime I wanted and record my songs and record other people's songs. And even with that kind of latitude, it took me several years, to get good at recording. It was the most frustrating thing. Here I'm a musician, I write a song, it's like, I think it's a great song, and, you record it, and then the record doesn't come out the way you want the record to come out. And so I realized, well, I didn't realize, it took me probably 3 or 4 years before I felt like my record sounded as good as what I was hearing on the radio or what I was hearing in CDs. And then once that happened, I said, screw it, I'm out. I'm going to LA. And so I moved to LA and I started my true professional journey there, really, in 1991.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know there's an interesting story about your record with the Pharcyde and where it came about.
Yeah, so when I got to LA, the first gig that I got after running through all my cash trying to get a gig was at Capitol Studios. Mm-hmm. And I worked there for 6 months doing setup for string sessions. It was a glorified runner position. I mean, I went and I got people food and stuff, but what I learned in setting up for orchestras was irreplaceable. I mean, that was a very good learning experience for me. And then after I got fired from that gig, rightfully so, I went to Hollywood Sound, and Vicky Giordano gave me a chance there, and I was assisting on records and I was recording records. I would do firsting too, first engineering. Mm-hmm. And then I was assisting for this group, the Pharcyde was there, and they were being mixed. I think Joe Primo was mixing them. It was for an EP. And the label president, who I'd met several times through this process, was there, and he's the pretty album producer anyway. And, I'm talking to him, and he's complaining about this studio, Paramount Studios. It was a recording studio, and they were fairly atrocious and not very expensive, like $35 an hour. And I'm like, Mike, Jesse, the owner of Hollywood Sound, put this production room. It's basically just a room, you know, and he put DAW in it. And I mean, this is 1992, so DAW is like, this is cutting edge.
Yeah.
Sound tools had been around for a few years, but you know, people were still making records on analog. DAW was like kind of something new. So I'm like, all right, well, I learned how to use that DAW. And so then I said to Mike, why don't you come up here? Jesse's going to charge the same price as you're paying at Paramount, and you can work with me. I've been doing this stuff for 4 years already. You know, I'm not new. And so he's like, all right, well, let's do it. So the next day I'm recording the Pharcyde upstairs at Hollywood Sound, and they decide I want to hold the U47 as they're rapping. And I'm like, oh, guys, you don't want to hold a U47. No, we got to, you don't understand the energy, man. Okay. All right, go ahead. Hold the U47. Knowing that this is an extremely sensitive mic, as you know, and that it's meant to be in a shock mount cage because it's so sensitive. And if you hold it, you're going to get a lot of noise. And that's exactly what we got. And you get popped because they're holding it right in front of their face. So it was really bad. I'm thinking, okay, I'll talk to Mike tomorrow. Mike comes in the next day and he like sits down next to me. He's like, Eric, it's not working out. I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. They were holding the you don't hold a U47. I'm like, I know that. You know that. But he's like, well, tell him not to. I'm like, I couldn't. Dude, I have no authority with these guys yet. It's the first day. I can't go politics here. I got to right. You know.
Earn trust.
I did that. They wouldn't trust me. So I had to let them just do it, knowing it would be horrible. And, you know, I almost lost a gig over it, but I still think that was the right play. Because as soon as Mike realized that, you know, what happened, you know, he went to the Pharcyde and called the Pharcyde. He's like, guys, you can't hold the mic. You got to listen to Eric. Whatever he tells you to do, you got to listen because that was horrible. We can't use any of that. And so everything went.
Yeah. It's kind of smooth sailing after that.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Months is a long. I've never spent that much time on any other album since. So, you know.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of...
Yeah. That is a long time. Crazy. So many records after that, you've worked with the Bare Naked Ladies, 9 Days, all kinds of people. So where did you kind of go from the Pharcyde?
After the Pharcyde, I mix a lot of hip hop for the next 3 years because, you know, once you start getting into those circles, you know, you tap a vein. Mm-hmm. So I knew all the hip hop guys that were up and coming and who were getting, you know, who were close to getting record deals, and when they got them, they would come to me, and then I would end up mixing their albums. So I did that for a few years. Oh, I mixed the brand new heavies. I was fired from Hollywood Sound right in the middle of that, and then Mike Ross hired me directly after that. So then I went right back into Hollywood Sound. So I'm like, you guys fired me. You gotta give me an assistant. I'm a client now.
Right.
He was so mad. It's all good, but at that moment she was so mad.
Yeah, so Vicky was the manager at Hollywood Sound, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then the Brand New Heavies was a good album, and then in '95 I got a call from Ben Harper, or from Virgin actually, Andy Factor, asking me if I could mix this Ben Harper album. And he told me, listen, we've been through several mixers already and we're just not getting what we want. And these were big mixers. I'm like, all right. So I go in, I'm listening to it, and I realize it needs a lot of low end. And so it's a rock thing. Nobody's mixing rock with low end. And I'm mixing 3 years of hip hop and I love low end. And I'm like, well, why don't I put low end in rock music too? Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. And that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted like a hip hop rock out. And so, and that put me right squarely into a whole other new circle of people. And in fact, I didn't do any hip hop after that. Not by my choosing. It's just that I kind of got moved over to this other lane, and that's where I ended up. And you would think, well, the hip hoppers would still hire you, but it's just for whatever reason, that's not how it worked. So, I did a bunch of different records. 97, I did Ben Harper again, his Will to Live album. 99, I recorded Ben Harper's album, Burn to Shine, and mixed that. And then in the aughts, when I was doing Lifehouse and Bare Naked Ladies and all those records, those were with the producer, Ron Aniello, and I was operating purely as a recordist in that time period because I was having trouble going from a mix engineer to a producer, because the record labels they much they found mix engineers important. They didn't view them as the kind of people that moved over to producing. You either did that as a musician or a recordist, or you came in as just as a producer.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, Rick Rubin and George Drakoulias, both those guys were basically music fan producers. They didn't know anything about anything other than that they loved music and knew what they liked.
Right.
That was their position. And they were both pretty successful, so especially Rick. So I lost the plot.
Where were so you were working with Lifehouse and all those guys, and where were you working out of?
Yellow, and I was trying to get into producing, and actually that kind of worked. So after that, I started producing more, and then all bets are off after 2008. Once the economy crashed and the business crashed, then it was we've been in survival mode ever since then.
Mm-hmm.
Royalties dry up. It's just everything changed. All right,
Mm-hmm.
musicians and engineers and producers are not the only ones that had to deal with that, but we got hit pretty hard by it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so around all that, this little thing called The Daily Adventures of Mixerman happened.
Yeah, I was working with Ron a lot when I did that one.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I did that before I ended up working with Ron, now that I think about it. Anyway, yeah, in 2002, some events conspired to keep me home for about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to stay home. I had to be home. And so I had this idea. I'm like, well, my son was in school. I would take him to school early in the morning and I'd pick him up in the afternoon. And so I had this time available. And so I had this idea. I was trying to promote this forum. I hear, man, people were still operating on Usenet more than on the internet at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Usenet was like the Wild West of the internet, because there's no moderators. Once it's posted, it stays forever. Amen. And so here I am on the internet. There's a lot of resistance to people going over to the internet because the internet was more commercialized and they liked the Wild West aspects of Usenet, and I didn't necessarily blame them. Mm-hmm. But my job was to try and grow this thing, and I was being paid a stipend. And so I would post, and there were like 200 people that were frequenting that forum at the time. Like, it was nothing. So I'm like, well, I had this idea to like attract people to the forum. I'd start writing about this session with an infamous producer and a bidding war band. Because by the time I had written that, I had actually done, the year before, I had done 2 albums with Ron Aniello. After I was working with Ron, and both of those records were shelved. Another band.
The first one, your audio cut out for a second there. I think the first one you said was 9 Days.
9 Days, and then another band.
Yeah.
Who's to be nameless. It doesn't even matter because nobody ever heard of them. And so I had this idea to write this story, and so when I had the time, I decided to do it, and I started posting it, and 200 people became 1,000, became 2,000. I remember going there like the next week, and I'm hitting refresh. It used to be you hit refresh and there'd be no views. There'd be 5 views for the day. You hit refresh and 5 more, refresh, 5 more. And it just kept building and building and building. And by week 4, someone put up the entire week 4 on Usenet. And then it was off the charts. Then there was 25,000 people coming every day to read this stupid thing. And then By the time it was done, it was up to 150,000 people a day. But I didn't have anything more to say on the subject. It was done. The book was done. So it wasn't even meant to be a book. It was just live. So it really took off. It was quite an exciting experience to have something go viral. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
It again.
Yeah. And it did a couple of times, right? Because there was the Usenet experience, and then, you know, when you actually published the book.
Well, you know, I didn't sell 150,000. I gave it away, so people don't buy it. But
yeah,
over time, people buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
I like copies, just not 150,000 is all.
Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, it was basically you documenting a session that was based off of experiences, and it was basically just all these hilarious stories about things that would happen to you. Like one that jumps out in my mind was you were doing drum tracking for this record, and the producer, before he had even come to the sessions, decided that he wanted to reinforce the drums in the room with a PA. So he had a guy come and set up a giant and he showed up to the session, moved all of your microphones so that he could place his own microphones onto the drums. And you just spent an entire 2 days, was it, or a day?
Like that, 2 days trying to get tones with this horrible drummer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many funny things in the book.
Cotton.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, the drummer's nickname was Cotton, and yeah, the book is absolutely hilarious to read. And also, I got the audiobook version of it a couple weeks ago and listened to it on a road trip, and I couldn't stop listening to it because it was so funny. But you have a lot of guest people on there doing voices for it.
Yeah, Ken Scott plays Willie's show. He recorded the Beatles. I got Ron St. Germain on there, Jeff Lorber, Ed Cherney. I got a lot. They're all like world-renowned producers and engineers doing playing the characters.
Yeah, Dave Pensato was the manager.
Dave Pensato played Shorty Pants.
Yeah.
The band man. The Mixerman. I guess we should probably say.
What was that again? Sorry, I cut out.
Anonymous engineer, and at the time everybody thought it was real. They didn't know. They thought they kept coming back to like, who's this band? And then people were trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. At one point, we break the glass between the control room and the studio, and I'm telling you, people were calling all over the place trying to figure out what studio lost their control room glass.
When I was listening to it, I was trying to think of studios that had the bathroom near the control room, because at one point you have the radar editor is set up in the bathroom because you didn't have another place to put him.
Yeah, like my vision of this studio for this story. Yeah. For years, everybody thought it was real. A lot of people, may be listening to this and be very upset to find out that it's, fiction. But, I don't know what to tell you. I did all that I could to try and give it away. But, but I didn't admit it for the longest time either, because it is part of the hook. Mm-hmm. But, we're many years after when I wrote it. It's a satire. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I shouldn't digress like that. I lose my place. What was I just talking about?
Well, I was trying to figure out what studio it was because of the radar editor being in the bathroom.
So the studios, that is not actually the floor plan of any studio in the world that I know of. It's kind of like, in my head, it's kind of a combination between Royal Tone and Rumbo and a couple of others, really. Mm-hmm. And so it's like this meld. Everything is, all of the characters are composite. The room is composite. Everything's, you take from what you know, and then you kind of rearrange it and put it back together again.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of McNugget.
The funny, chicken McNugget, nice. The fun part for me was, I think I had read at that point that it was totally satire, but while listening to the book, still knowing that it was based off of experiences, even if it was spread out over different sessions or whatever, still made it really, really fun.
Yeah, there's nothing in there.
Yeah.
One story in there that didn't happen on my session, but is legend, and that's the headphone story. I won't give it away, but yeah, when the drummer has problem with his headphones, that's a legendary story. It could be total myth, but it's a good story. So
Yeah.
I in there.
Nice. Yeah, I love that one. Okay, so after the Daily Adventures of Mixerman, you went on to write a couple other books. You had Zen and the Art of Recording, Producing, and Mixing. Which one of those came first?
Mixing was first. So in 2002, I wrote the blog. In 2004, I decided, well, I couldn't find a publisher that wanted to pick it up. All the publishers were like, you put it on the internet, we want nothing to do with it. So I'm like, all right, well, I should probably capitalize on the success of the story online. And so I printed up 3,000 copies. Cost me like 20 grand to start up that business. And I probably broke even in the end. Sold all. Come 2008, and I realized I can't. I have a music career. I can't be in a running this publishing business too. Not for the kind of numbers that I was doing. Mm-hmm. So, Hal Leonard approached me in 2008. I agreed to let them put out the Daily Adventures of Mixerman. They put that out in 2009, and then 2010, I approached my publisher about doing Zen and the Art of Mixing, and I gave them the pitch, and they're like, yeah, we'd love that. So I wrote that in the beginning of 2010, and that book's done great. That's actually my best-selling book. Mm-hmm. It's always selling. And it's a little different than most mixing books because I approach the philosophy rather than the specific nuts and bolts processes of it. Mm-hmm. Now, you can get those everywhere, and there's probably people that are in a better position to describe that than me. For me, arrangement and the reaction that you get. If you can make yourself react as the mixer to the music the way you're supposed to react, then you can get the listener to react that way too. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the running theme in the newest book. I'm gonna just jump way ahead here real quick. Mm-hmm. Which is called Musicians Survive Back to a Killer Record. And I should probably get you a book down here to show it. But
I have a graphic on screen right now of it too. So, so I kind of took that part of mixing and applied it to the Musician Survival Guide, which is the newest one, because I realized that there's so many musicians now that are thinking about trying to think like engineers and think about sound. And I'm trying to tell musicians, don't think about sound. Don't try and be an engineer, because I was doing it every day and it took 3 years to get good at it. So if you're an artist or you're a musician and you're trying product, you don't have time to learn how to become an engineer. So we got to get the engineering aspect out of the way as much as humanly possible. And so that's what I go through in the book. And in that book, and it's very similar to the mixing in that way, because it's a lot about how you think about this stuff, how you think about the arrangement, how you think about the performance, and how you think about the song. So, okay, now I'll rewind. So after mixing, I did Zen and the Art of Producing. And then 2 years after that, I did Zen and the Art of Recording. All those are on actually, 2 of them are coming back to me. Mm-hmm. The Daily Adventures has come back to me. I've put out the Daily Adventures of Mixerman myself as a paperback, trade paperback. So that's still on Amazon. That's going to be in stores also in that as the trade paperback. And it's a whole different ballgame, because like in when I put Mixerman, I had to spend 20 grand. Mm-hmm. Now I don't have to spend hardly anything, because Amazon prints it for me when the person orders it. So I don't have to print books and store them. Amazon takes care of all of it. They give me all the tools to get everything set up. And then it's automatic after that. That's great.
I still have to run it like a publishing business. I am interested in running a publishing business at this point. But that's because of where we're at. In 2004, that didn't make any sense. Now it makes sense. Especially with the tools that Amazon has given me. So let me see. And then there's one other book, #Mixerman and the Billionaire Parent, which pretty much bombed. Mm-hmm. I don't really know why. uh, but
So,
I did it, and I will do better next time.
let's talk about that one for a second, because I actually really enjoyed it. So let's have you explain it.
Well, premise of the book is pretty. It's 15 years after the daily adventures of Mixerman, at the height of the lunacy of the music business, when $500,000 budgets were commonplace. Here we are 15 years later. The business is gone. It's a shadow of its former self. Big tech has replaced the labels as the major player of the game. Music's devalued to almost nothing because it's given away for free on Spotify, and artists and musicians are paid pennies as these big tech companies are making billions. And this is 3 years before now, because things are starting to change again. And Mixerman is who's me, but as a character, Mixerman is called by this a billionaire from India, and he wants Mixerman to mentor his son, and he'll pay Mixerman handsomely his entire year's nut to mentor his son. And Mixerman's like, well, all right, I don't think I can turn that down. So I accept the gig, and it turns into this adventure, another adventure, in which I realize, why am I teaching this kid how to become a producer or an engineer? He's the son of a billionaire. He should be in the business of songs, not in the business of doing a job. You know what I mean? A trade job, basically. Mm-hmm. And so once I realized this, we go on a road trip, and all sorts of interesting things ensue on our journey, and we create a song. And this song is called Just Another Douchebag. I don't know how much I want to give away. Does that give
away? Not too much. Yeah.
Well, I put the song on it's called Just Another Douchebag. And I actually got the Pharcyde to do the raps on it for me. Two of the original Pharcyde, Trey and Imani. Mm-hmm. Not Imani. What am I saying?
Sorry, your audio cut out again. What was
Trey and Fatlip is who did it. And I got the idea for the song in the book because we're stuck behind a person in a Prius driving really slowly, and they won't pull over on any of the. In California, you're supposed to pull over if you've got 5 cars behind you, and this douchebag doesn't pull over. And so we write this song called Just Another Douchebag. You're just another douchebag driving in a Prius, right? And so then it's about selling the song, and he's a billionaire, and he's got a lot of resources, and so that's when things get really crazy.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna bring up the artwork for everybody again, because I once again I listened to the audiobook on this one, and it was as hilarious as Daily Adventures. And again, you had a lot of really cool guests on there, but I saw the artwork after I listened to it, and it all made a lot more sense. But it was pretty fun. So the cats running around actually have a lot to do with it.
Oops is fully music.
Yeah.
It's got guests just like the Daily Adventures of Mixerman. It's a full production. I base them off Fireside Theater, which is even before my time, really. But they used to do the old 40s radio style thing where they have the, if you're walking in snow, they have cornstarch there, and they've got all sorts of things that makes sound effects. And so those are incorporated in the plays. So I based it off that.
Yeah. It's really a fun listen for anybody who likes podcasts or audiobooks. Definitely check both of those out because they're pretty fun. So tell me a little bit more about the new book. Who benefit from reading this one?
I think I wrote it specifically for musicians, which is why I put musicians as the first word in the title. But honestly, I think that engineers could benefit from it too, and I think that engineers' clients could benefit from it. If you've got a client that could use to understand some things, that's a musician. I mean, the thing is, musicians record at home now. I mean, it's they've always recorded at home, but not like this. I mean, people are making entire albums at home now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all well and good, but you better have the right expectations and you better make the album based on what you have available. Instead, you go online and you read about, oh, yeah, you need this and you need that and you need this to make a great album. And really what you need is creativity and great music and a great song and great performances and a great arrangement. And if you get all of that together, then everything else falls in place. But we focus so much on the recording. People who don't even sounds like miking up something stereo doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm talking about when I say when you think like an engineer. When you think about the stereo image, the strongest stereo image is when you take mono signals and you pan them across your stereo image. Anytime you take like a stereo piano, that's a very, very weak stereo image. It mucks up the middle. Mm-hmm. When you muck up the middle, you leave yourself less room for the vocal. So now you got to put the vocal louder. To which you say, well, what's the big deal? You want the vocal loud. Yeah, you want the vocal loud, but one of the reactions is to get people to sing, but the other reaction is to get people to move or some other physical reaction, goosebumps, tap your toe, nod your head, whatever you need to cause a physical reaction. And if you put the vocal too loud, you risk losing the physical reaction, right? So there's this inherent tension between the level of the vocal, the track. And anybody that's worked for a major label is very aware of this tension, because it's always the debate on every record. So
it's where all the vocal up mixes come from, and
it's
where all the vocal up, vocal down mixes come from.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we need two reactions. I lost my place again, man. You got to help me out.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, just talking about what's in the book, what kind of information's in the book. I read through the table of contents, and there's a great amount of information and resources for someone who's not necessarily been an engineer for 10 years and honed their skills, but needs a crash course in engineering almost.
One of the things that I'm recommending is to keep things simple. So if you're not an engineer, then why are you going to try and do engineering things? Really, you only need one microphone for most things. If you need stereo, and I explain how to do it so that I can teach musicians what they're listening for when it comes to phase coherency. Mm-hmm. Because that's the critical part. If you can hear it, then when you're hearing it, it's there. But every engineer that I know has been sat down and someone had to explain it to them. And the first time you hear it, you're like, I don't hear anything. And then when you do hear it, you can't stop hearing it because you become allergic to it. You put one guitar on one side, you make a duplicate track, you flip the phase and you put it on the other side. You and I hear that, we're like, whoa, we know exactly what's going on instantly. A musician who's not aware of it may not know what that sounds like. Mm-hmm. So it becomes unimportant. So it's more important for us to be able to hear it. Because then once you hear it, you don't want to do it. So, I talk about keeping it simple, and then I go through all of the technical stuff, and I try and break down the technical stuff down to exactly what it is you have to know in order to strategize and make good decisions based. So if you only have two dynamics and a condenser, you can now strategize in a situation with what combination of mics to use where, when, and it's like, because now you're not getting bogged down, but rather just understanding the practical applications of what you have available at that moment when you're making the record. Mm-hmm. Because a great art is made with the resources that you have available to you at the time. So you got to do it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. I have a question for you from the chat room here. Let's see here. So this one is from a user called Bang Bang, and he says, Mixerman, as you're an entrepreneur, could you talk about how you balance and prioritize all of the various aspects of your career? So how do you balance work, life, and lessons?
Well, the balance between being a recording engineer or a mixer or producer and family is probably the most difficult balance to get right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that I ever did. Now it's different ball game, because for me, my son's grown up, so I have a lot of latitude that I didn't have. I raised my son myself, so I had to change some things around. I put a mixed room in my house, in 2011, and for 5 years I mixed out of the house in LA, and I still have a mixed room. It's in Asheville, North Carolina.
Mhm.
But I changed how I was doing things at the time, because I was the only caretaker of my son while he was from junior high through high school. And so that was okay. It was a little easier because he was a little older, and I had made some arrangements. I had a guy who I gave a room to, so that he would be around when I had to go out. He would feed my son, and he fed me. You get creative. But for now, my son's going to college and stuff, and he's still living with me, but not for much longer. So I have more latitude. So the balance is a lot easier. But I used to think you got to work 12-hour days, and you probably do. You certainly did when I thought that. But now I realize, I really don't want to work 12-hour days, and I work 8-hour days, if that. And I still work 12 hours, but I don't work 12 hours in the studio. Okay. So, and my life partner is kind of involved in everything I do. So that brings balance. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that I can tell you how to balance your life. If you're in the studio 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, there is no balance. So if you want to get a balance, then everything and try and figure out what that balance is and make it work. And
sorry, you cut out at you want to get a balance, and then the great secret was lost in the internet.
Okay. If you want to get a balance in life, I suppose the answer is that you just have to seek that balance and be willing to do it. And that means if it takes cutting your hours down to 8 hours a day and only working 5 days a week, or maybe 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, or whatever, to give yourself that, then fine. But if you're the kind of person that's like, I can't do that, well, then it's not that important to you, that balance. You'd rather be working. And that may sound harsh, but if I put myself under the same lens, it's because I wanted to be working. Mm-hmm. If I really wanted to be around, then I would have been around. And when it came time that I had to be around, then I made the decision to be around. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really simple as that.
Right. It's to keep things going as much, when you cut your hours down. But yeah, like you said, it's a life choice. Yeah.
Listen, when I go into the studio with a band, I go 12 hours a day because we're paying for the studio. But once I come home, I can reduce those hours. What's it going to cost me? A few days, a week? You know what I mean? That's worth it to me, to have a little time and some sanity. Mm-hmm. But, this is coming from a person that worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and drove an hour up to studios for years and years and years. So, I'm in a little bit of a different place at this point. I don't want to keep doing that. I already did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd like to hear a little bit about your transition to Asheville, too. So you were based in LA for how many years?
25 years.
Yeah.
Moved there on January 3rd. I arrived in 1991, and I left on September 30th 25 years later. Yeah. So I left like 3 months short of 25 years. Yeah. It would have been.
Yeah. What brought you to Asheville?
Well, my son graduated high school. I really wasn't doing all that much work in LA. Most of my work was coming from all over the world. Loved LA. Just kind of events kind of aligned where I was going to have to move from the place I was in. And I was just like, I talked to my partner and I talked to my son and about Asheville because I had been coming here and producing acts out of here. I produced an act in 2008 from Raleigh but here in Asheville, I did the record. They were called Strange Faces. And then in 2010, I did a very well-known local Josh Phillips and the Josh Phillips Folk Festival. And then I did another really well-known act around here called The Broadcast, a rock band, in 2012. So I was coming back, and I fell in love with this town. I knew that I wanted to move to this town at some point. I just didn't know when. The kind of things aligned, and there's a world-class studio here with lots of instruments and lots of guitars, and so I can make any record that I need to here. And so it just kind of made sense because I almost have my monthly nut by getting out of LA.
Mm-hmm.
Especially cities where I was at, and it doesn't change a thing as far as my work situation is concerned. So that's what we did. My son here, he's going to school here. He's got a 4.0, and my partner is Tanya is. She teaches college education massage courses now here in Asheville, and she's a healer and a massage therapist, and so this is Mecca for her.
Yeah.
So it's working out really great, and now we're going to go on tour, and I'm going to start doing these Mixerman Live shows. I did one in Greensboro, the first one. And I'm gonna start hitting this whole region. I'm gonna set up one for Atlanta, Charlotte, Durham. Where I've already talked to a guy about Durham, Charleston. There's so many, 100,000 to 250,000 size towns around here.
Right.
And so I'm I think I'm calling it the Musician Survival Tour, Mixerman Musician Survival. A trip to Texas, and go meet people and talk about this stuff live.
That's great. Yeah. What kind of stuff is going to happen in the live thing?
Well, the live talk that I did the other day was a 2-hour event. It was supposed to be 45 talk and 45 Q&A. No, I'll get it where it needs to be. Basically, I spend half of it talking about the things that we're talking about here. Songs, reaction, building a record with intent, understanding the space that you're operating within, because that's critical. Not thinking about sound, except within arrangement, and it's based on frequency, which are notes. That sort of thing was the first one. But I'm probably going to do a couple of different themes. Because sometimes I may do 2 in some towns.
Cool. Let's switch it up, everybody.
I love it. It was so fun doing it. I'm so excited to do this. I'll set them up in legs. I'll set up, a bunch, and then I'll come back, do some work, do a bunch more, and hopefully I can hit the country and the whole country in the next couple of years.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Definitely gonna have to look for that. I have another question from the chat room for you. This one is from Colin Derrick, and he says, what advice would you... What's that?
Where is this chat room?
So they're on the YouTube page.
Oh, they're on YouTube?
Yeah, I think it's that link I sent you in Skype.
Cool.
So let's see. So Colin Derrick asks, what advice would you give to someone whose goal is to produce a major label release? Oh, that's great. Yeah. Definitely going to have to look for that. I found it.
All right, maybe I don't want to look at this. Ask me that one more time. My bad.
Yeah, it gets all weird when you start seeing things with the time delay and. Yeah. What advice would you give to produce a major label?
Why is that your goal?
Yeah. That's a good question. So Colin, you can respond to that in the chat.
I don't understand why that's the goal. Listen. The days of like you going and getting a major label deal on your own without having done any of the legwork is gone. People are not getting signed from their garages anymore. That's done. You don't give a fuck about anything other than how many people are interested in you, because that's how they do sales. So it used to be they had to kind of guess based on expertise, supposed expertise. Now it's right there in front of them. They can tell whether you're getting a reaction by how many Facebook friends you've got, by how many people, by how much action you have on social media alone. How much are you streaming? Why would they bother? The only time that you really could get a deal as an artist with a major label without going through all that is if you hook yourself up with songwriting producers who are all tied into the business, who are all tied into the publishing, and then you have a shot. But you got to be in LA, find those people and work with them. They're going to find you songs. It's all about the songs. You go in as an artist and you come in with great songs by great producers with a track record, then you could get a deal. But you're not writing the songs. So now you're basically only getting paid for the record sales.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money in that.
Yeah. No
So
sales now.
I guess on the streaming, you could, but beyond that, if you really want a record deal, you still got to do it on your own first. Then, when you're ready, they will come, because the record company and go, you sold 70,000, or they look and they say, oh, you have several million streams. All right, well, we can convert that into 10 to 100 times that. And so that's where they shine. That's what they're good at. They're not good at taking someone from 0 to 1 million. They're good at taking someone who's done the legwork to 1 million.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. How have you seen the way that labels approach artists change in your career? I mean, did you see a lot more development happening at the start of your career than you do now? Besides the whole streaming conversation and all that stuff, but just how labels were helping artists.
Well, label development's never really been much of a thing. I mean, not in my career anyway. Label development occurred, in the 60s and 70s. I mean, you take a look at Pink Floyd, and they had 3 duds pretty much before they really came to their own. It was going to get them hurt. And a record label. There is not a period in time in my career that a record label would wait 3 albums for you. You had 1 album. Mm-hmm. And if it didn't sell, and even if it sold, I mean, 9 Days sold, 1 million records on their first album and were dropped on the second after making it. And the reason that they were dropped, the A&R guy from Atlantic said, well, we only have so many slots for radio, and if we put you in this slot, we figure you're good for 500,000 sales. But if we got this R&B act that we'd rather put in that slot that we figure is good for 2 million sales, so we're dropping you.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, right?
That record did really well, the first one.
First album did really well, but only 1 song. But labels didn't fucking they didn't care. Is the next thing that was going to sell, because they had to sell more, because they're a corporation. If they're not selling more, then they're contracting. So,
yeah. Well, back to the point of why is that your goal? I'm guessing he's looking to work on bigger projects. So maybe
you're an artist.
I'm going to guess that this is going to be an engineer or a producer. Colin, let us know if that's different. But maybe I'll kind of rephrase that question into if you are an engineer, that say you're working in a small town with more indie bands, and maybe his goal is to work on a larger project, a higher profile, something like that.
I see. two ways to get in with major labels: proximity and development. And that's pretty much it. So if you're in proximity, that means you got to move to LA and you got to meet as many people as you can. You got to network your way in.
Mm-hmm.
You got to end up on a project that's with a major label, and that'll get you another one. So that's proximity and networking. And then the other way is to develop something locally that the labels are interested in. And that's pretty much it, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've heard you make the comment before that that's a credits game among...
It's 100% a credits game. If the moment you get something of note, you got to parlay that into another record of note. But before you have it, then you just got to have the opportunity come up. So you have to keep yourself in position. That's why proximity is so important. If you really want to work with major labels, you got to be near the major labels.
Mm-hmm.
LA, Nashville. I don't know else.
Yeah. And then, I mean, for someone who's watching your career, where you moved out of the major market, and that is working for you with higher profile stuff still because you've
decision. I was going to stay in LA. If I wanted to stay in LA, either I had to go and really, try and get myself into the whole major label thing, where that was primarily where all my work was coming from, which was a rat race that I didn't want to get into anymore, not at my age.
Yeah.
So I want to make the records that I want to make, period, whatever they are. And I have other things going on, with the writing and whatever that makes that possible. And, that was also part of the reason of moving to Asheville, because there's a lot of acts here, and I can produce them and develop them, and maybe I can get something that's, that hits from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it makes sense for me to be a big fish here, because then I have, a lot more competition for developing someone. There's nothing worse than being in competition to develop someone.
Right.
I don't want to do that. I want to be the only person that's involved, and I don't want to have to deal with trying to beat out someone else to do something that's a risk on my part. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, it made sense to move out here, because I don't want to get into the full-time major label gig thing. So I'd rather just develop talent at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Let's see. So I got another good question here. Let's see. Let's go with Paul Lucas. How do you approach taking a simple song idea to a full production? So let's say it's a new artist that approaches you, and they've got an acoustic guitar and a vocal or something like that.
I don't get involved if the song isn't done. I mean, that's not my gig. I call that a ditty, an undeveloped idea. I do a song. I'm not turning your ditty into a song. Not unless I was going to get songwriting credit, and then I'd be songwriting at that point. Mm-hmm. So, but for me as a producer, I'm jumping in. Either I'm jumping in, I'm producing you because you've done a lot of records and you need a producer, and we're just going to make it. And you know that I know what I'm doing. I know what you know what you're doing. Or I'm coming in at a point where the artist has recorded a bunch of their own stuff, and they're ready for a producer. They're making money, they're touring, and they want to bring their record up to the next level. And that's usually where I want to jump in. That's the sweet spot. If I go in too early, I have way more risk involved. If they have more skin in the game, then it makes a lot more sense. And then I'm just paid a fee, and there's points too, but points have been pretty much worthless for a while now. They're going to start to become again points. But
sorry, it cut out. You said that they're going to start to.
Points are going to start to come back again because of that legislation that was passed. Producers are paid now. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Could you elaborate on that a little bit for somebody who might not know? I know that you follow the politics of all of this pretty closely, so it'd be a great one to talk about.
politics involved because, I mean, it passed Congress by just about everybody, and Trump even signed it. There's not a lot of to be heard about it because there's so few bills that are so unanimously passed, and it's 12 years way late in passing, because you could see this in 2006 when Spotify came online. What was there, and very quickly, and the wheels of government move very slowly, and so I can't, honestly, I don't even really know like what the solution was. I know that the pros, the performance rights organizations like ASCAP, CSAC, BMI, they're happy about it, seem happy about it. It gives them more tools. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe it till I see it at this point. So we'll see what happens and what people start saying they're getting in their checks. You talk to artists before, they're like, geez, I don't get hardly anything. Now we'll see what happens.
Right.
Supposedly the producers are listed in there, and producers are to get statutory payments too. So, if I produce something, it sounds like if I produce something, and believe me, before I do my next project, I will understand how it works, that I'm given statutory payments just like the artist is. But that's who's paying that.
Sorry, what was the last part of that?
I said, who's paying that? We'll see. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. It's, when I produce a record for a label, the artist is who pays me. So the artist gives a letter of direction to the label to say, pay the producer, when you pay me, pay the producer this. It used to be 3%, 3 points, which is actually 20% of their deal. Okay, so the label is directed to pay on the artist's behalf, but my deal is with the artist. So when the artist started streaming and they were getting paid on mechanicals, I'm sorry, not on mechanicals, on performance, instead of mechanicals, I'm asked out because all of my payments come from mechanicals, from the sales. Without the sales, there's no payments. So the streaming just completely obliterated any chance I ever had in the past 8 years of collecting. Yeah. So now that's maybe going to change. We'll see.
Yep. Yeah. At least a step in. So.
We'll see though.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Here's a question from a guy named Scratch Track. And he says, can you share some examples of unusual recording techniques you've used that made it to the final record? An example, like the pooper time cube you recently did with Ryan Earnhardt.
Right.
You might have to explain that one to us.
All right. Well, so I did this thing called Sound Odyssey with Ryan Earnhardt, who is on YouTube, Creative Sound Labs. And we call it Sound Odyssey, and Ryan's a local guy here, and and he makes videos teaching people how to record, right? So we got together and I said, Ryan, have you ever made a delay out of a drainage pipe? And he's like, no. So we went to Home Depot and we got 100 feet of that corrugated drainage pipe, 6 inches wide. And so you yell on it and it delays back. And so you can use that as a delay. And so I've used it on records as a delay and these things are unruly. And so you're unwinding them and then you get it down here to buy the microphone. And so the singer's singing in the mic and you're getting the delay back too. You don't have a lot of control over it. So, you're printing that. I've done it with guitar too. I'll get the thing and I get it right by the microphone and the guitar goes chunk, chunk, and you can hear the slap back. The pipe, the bigger the delay. And I got the idea for that when I took my son to the Science Museum in LA. They had an enormous one of these things where, it was probably, I don't know, it probably had a 5 foot diameter, and it went the entire length of this room, a few hundred feet. And you yell on it and it comes back to you. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. So I did this. I used to carry it around. done a bunch of things, man. The ones that pop into my head right now is on Susie Blue, Ben Harper's Susie Blue. It starts with a radio, jun jun jun, like it's like a New Orleans kind of band. And so I took a little speaker and I took a mic and I played it out, and I had to block it with different pieces of paper and stuff until I got it sounding just the way I wanted it to. And then one time, Ben decided to put stereo vocals on this one song, also on Burn to Shine. It's one of the songs on there. And so I set up 2 microphones like this and had him going like this as he's doing this chanting kind of thing. And we record and science experiment with stereo vocals like that. I call those things science experiments. You're spending way too much time to do something stupid, and at the time it's like the greatest thing ever, and then 20 years later, whatever. Did it make it sell one more unit? No. You get more.
Yeah, right. That's
But
pretty fun.
engineer, you want to do those kinds of. I was an engineer in that situation, and I'm like, what am I going to do? My responsibilities are to keep the technology out of the way, but I also got to entertain myself, and whim is part of it. And these kinds of crazy fun things, thinking of these things is also part of it. And it keeps the session fun and light, and it keeps the recording part of it part of the creative process. So it's all good.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Let's see, we got another one here from Joshua Hawksley. And he says, at your level in the game, do you still spend time scouting new talent to work with, or is your production workload filtering through with you?
I'm always looking for something. I go through periods where I have the time to do it, and I go through periods where I just don't. But that doesn't mean that if something comes along where I go, oh my God, I have to work with this person, I can help this person, then I would. A lot of my production work, though, probably most of it right now is for hire production work. Yeah. I'm not developing nearly as much right now, but part of that is because I've got this other business, the publishing business going on. So, I have to build that business, and that's requiring a lot of energy and a lot of time. And so I basically need to take for hire work at this point for the next probably 6 months before I'm like in a position again. It's really about my position. And right now I'm not in a position, but I'm always looking, always looking.
Yeah. When you find an artist that you really want to work with, do you invest yourself in that project personally? And I guess by that I mean, if you find somebody, say, in Nashville that would be, a really, really fun project to work on, or something that you believe in, do you work on rates with them, or work on like percentage of stuff with them, or how do you like to?
Yeah, I don't have a rate, man. I don't even know what I charge based. I have a bottom that I'll do for mixing that I won't do less than, but I don't really offer that rate to very many situations. Yeah, it's impossible for me to set a rate at this point, because if someone's like in a situation where they're, up and coming, they have a little bit of money from me, and I think that their music they're great, makes sense, but I still don't go below a bottom, because I find that when I do, that there's no appreciation there, and it starts to become your value, and I don't really want to do that. I'd rather do it for free if I was going to do that, and then we're points. But it really hasn't been a lot of incentive in the last 10 years for me to do things for back end. That's the problem. How am I supposed to work for back end when the back end doesn't exist?
Right.
See?
Yeah.
So if back end starts to exist, that changes the equation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't have a rate. Like Hustle Souls wanted me to produce them last year. They're a local act, and We did a fundraiser. I worked with them on what the bare minimum would be and what they thought they could raise, and they raised that amount. And so it was all negotiated based on that. But I also expect to for now, and that's the setup on that. The problem is that they don't have to. That was the deal with another act in recent years, and then they go and they work with other people, and it's like, oh, okay. So I went and I did your album for a really, really great price on the premise that we would continue to grow together, and then you went to someone else the moment you could.
Right.
So it's not really, I can't really bind someone contractually to work with me for 3 albums.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's something that comes up for a lot of people, especially, early in your career. You might find an artist that, it would be a great fit to work with. Maybe you have extra time, and, there's always the question of everybody has to figure out their own thing for rates and all of that. But it's always interesting to see how different people approach the topic of, man, I'd really love to work with that artist. The budgets aren't there, but I believe in this project, that kind of thing. So about how with you.
I can't start putting up a rate and then have major labels come to me when they do come to me and want that rate. You're not getting that rate.
Yeah,
so,
of course. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you're in a position where you can actually make money with the music, then I'm charging you my value.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm not mixing it.
Yep.
Because if you don't go to me, you got to go to someone else that costs what I do. So whatever, So I'm not going to publish a rate like that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And if you can't afford my full rate, then basically you're making me an offer anyway, aren't you? So make me an offer. I'll take a look at it. I'll listen to your music. I'll evaluate how much time it's going to take me, and I'll evaluate whether that's, whether I can put that kind of commitment in.
Right.
And if I can, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me see. I'm checking for another question here. John Wade is that U47 Ben particular studio, because they all sound different.
I don't really like U47s in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard really good sounding U47s. Maybe that's what usually they're Stephen Paul modified. But I never really heard a U47. I find them really mid-rangey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really big fan. I'm not saying, and I've used them. I've used lots of them.
As handheld mics.
I'd much rather 12 or an ELA M251. Mm-hmm. But frankly, I'm a big proponent of the Lewitt stuff at this point. I find that entire Lewitt line, even their inexpensive microphones, sound amazing. Mm-hmm. Like that 940, I have the 940. This one's, I think, the 440 Pure, but I have the 940. I can't find anyone that sounds bad on that thing.
Nice.
Because it's got the tube and it's got FET and it's variable, and so they have the tube is very warm and the FET's the FET, and so when you can and then they sound great. So I'm not one that's like, I gotta have this microphone or I gotta have that microphone. Like, you have the microphones you have. I'm more interested actually in whether it's a dynamic or a ribbon than anything else. Mm-hmm. A dynamic, a ribbon, or a condenser. And the more I record, the more ribbons I use. Mm-hmm. I love ribbons. I'm like, I don't understand why I didn't use ribbons more, like the entire time, because they sound amazing. They have this steep roll off on the top end. You can boost the shit out of the top end where you're not bringing up distortion. You can open them up, mm-hmm. or leave them the way they are. It depends on how you hear, what you want. But the last thing I recorded, I let Julian record it. I told him what I wanted, and he put ribbons on just about everything.
Nice.
So, I was talking to Ken Scott a few years back. We were talking about drums. He's like, "Oh yeah," in his British accent, which I won't try and do. Telling me with the same mics on every kit, 4038s, the Coles, mm-hmm. Those ribbons, and I by that point I probably put 4038s. Is that the right number?
I think so.
30,
Yeah.
the,
The yeah, the black Coles ribbon
yeah,
mics are the 4038.
I was putting them on as overheads half the time, and he's like, "Oh yeah, just stop fucking around and use those every time." And I started doing that, and they sound great every time.
Yeah.
I use a 121 pretty much exclusively on guitar amps.
Mm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
most people don't buy ribbons. Most musicians don't buy ribbons, so they don't use them. But as an engineer or as a producer, I love them.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you EQing a lot on the way in, or you just?
EQing them. I mean, I don't do any of the engineering anymore, other than the mixing. So I let Julian take care of that.
Yeah.
He's an engineer. Then I can think about all I need to think about is the performance and the artists and everything else.
Right.
Should be. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, years. Part of the reason that I was in a position to write Musician Survival Guide to a Killer Record is because years I was operating both as the producer and as the engineer, and I started to realize that, man, you can't do both at the same time. So I at all times one was suffering, and I realized that anytime I started thinking about the engineering, it got worse. So I just had to keep myself in the producer's headspace and limit the engineering as much as I possibly could. Mm-hmm. And so, I developed that for myself before I started recommending it to others, because I realized it works. You got to think the performance and everything else is what's important.
Right. Yeah. How about pre-production? Do you do a lot of pre-production?
We don't go in the studio till we're ready. So yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, I'm pretty good with the songs. If I'm with a band, we're just kind of nipping and tucking some things, maybe adjusting the form. A lot of times songs will be in condition for a live performance, so they're extended. So we got to figure out what the form's going to be. A lot of times I'll get involved with the drum patterns a little bit here and there. Mm-hmm. We'll start to, I'm very interested in getting the tempo. Like before we go in the studio, I know what the tempos are going to be within one or two either way. Mm-hmm. You get in the studio, and that's when you make your final decision, because everything's focused and you can really hear it. And so you might have, whereas it worked in rehearsal at one tempo, it might need to go up a little bit. So we don't lock in. Mm-hmm. We try to lock in the keys. I don't want to discover that the key's too high later. Yeah. Especially when we're recording vocals. Oh yeah, this is a little out of my range. No, we want to establish that before and maybe bring it down if possible. Yeah. Of course, the song key affects how you feel about the song. Sometimes bringing down the key for the singer is a problem. Right. So, play with that. So we nail all that down, and we rehearse, and we make sure that everybody's ready to go, and we've got the plan of attack, and we understand the vision, because I don't want debating the vision in the studio. When we go to the studio, we're spending money, so we got to be ready to go, and we need to work very efficiently. Then when we're out of the studio, we're here in my place, or we're there, or wherever. Then we can experiment a little bit, but we're there for a mission. Mm-hmm. Usually drums.
Right. Do you do overdubs at your place? What?
I can do some. Like I do all my vocals here in this room. This room sounds great. Mm-hmm. And even when I'm in the studio, I usually have the vocalist in the control room with me if I can. If they're not comfortable with that, fine. But I'll do electric guitar overdubs here. I've done them with amps, which is fine. I much prefer these days to use the Sims, to be honest. Really? I mean, a player brings in one amp, that's all we got. But they plug into the red DI, and we put it into the Scuffum amps, and I've got all sorts of different flavors available to me. And guitar players are going, "Oh my God, he uses Sims." I didn't for the longest time because they were horrible, but they're really good now. I mean, it's not going to prevent the production from doing well. So why would I even worry about that? Right. And it gives me the ability. I can get a Marshall, I can get a Mega Boogie, I can get a Mesa. I mean, I could get a rectifier sound. I can get a Fender sound, whatever. So it gives me a lot of palettes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have one that you like a lot, like in particular?
I've been using the Scuffum. I'm interested in checking out a couple of the others because there's, I see others people say Scuffum. Gibson makes one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard of another one. So I'll get all of those packages, as time goes on
Yeah.
and experiment with them. And I'll have new favorites and go-tos and whatever.
Yeah. I really like the line of questioning, so to speak, for you on producing and pre-production. I think that that's something that people overlook a lot. Let's say that you started to work on a project, everything's settled. You guys are saying, all right, let's get to work. What are your first steps with the band? Is it send me rehearsal tapes? Is it that you go to the rehearsal?
Well, when a band contacts me, the first thing I ask them to do is to send me everything they got. Mm-hmm. Particularly, first thing I ask is for 3 songs, their newest stuff, the roughs. Then if I love those, okay, good. So now send me everything. I want everything. I want everything. Your first album, your second album, however many albums there are. I've never ever sent it all because for some reason everything is lost on people. And I can't tell you how many times we get towards the end of a project and someone pulls out a song. I'm like, I've never heard this song. Why have I not heard this song? And it's like, we should have recorded that song. Mm-hmm. So because part of my job as a producer is to help them pick their best songs. Right. So if you don't send me all your songs, then how are we supposed to pick the best? Yeah. So I listen to everything. Sometimes I'm listening to 30 to 45 songs and I'll immerse myself. So I've decided based on those first 3 songs that I'm interested at this point. Mm-hmm. We have money. We've talked nothing. So then I figure out who they were, who they are now, where they went awry, what I think their vision is for them as artists, what I think the vision is for what they're doing now as far as music is concerned. Mm-hmm. And I work all of this out in my head, and then we have a conversation. I go and I sit down, talk about their music, what I think about all of these things that I've come up and that I've decided based on my best recommendations. And I give them those. And I tell them what my vision is for their album and why. Mm-hmm. Then we do some rehearsals. And I say, well, let me show you some things. And we do a rehearsal, and I do the beginning of the pre-production with them. Because if I can't sell the band on my vision, I don't want to do the album. I shouldn't actually say that. If they sold me on their vision, no. If they're not into my vision, I won't do the album.
No, I did mean to say that there.
Yeah, I did. The thing is, maybe if I was totally bought into their vision, then I would have been bought into it right from the roughs. And in that case, then I'm more of an overseer. That's a much more difficult and disciplined producer position because I'm a very hands-on producer. And so for me to step back and let them just do their thing is that I have super developed. I can do it. I get better. But that's what I'd have to do is I'd have to let them and just oversee it and be their backstop. But I much prefer to be hands-on and involved. And so I end up on those. So after pre-production, if the band is bought into it, we're ready to talk money. We can talk money. We talk money. We figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time we talk money or contracts or anything about anything like that. Because a producer band or producer artist relationship is a relationship that's based on trust. And, with a major label, if a major label hires me to produce someone, I'm getting money up front before we're even talking, really. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe not before we're talking, but certainly before we're doing pre-production, but that's different. I still can get fired after pre-production, though. Mm-hmm. It's just that I've gotten a guarantee is the difference. So with an artist that's paying for themselves or is on a smaller label or whatever, established 100%. And once I feel that trust is there, then I'm ready to go. and they're ready to go too. And then it's a piece of cake. There's no drama. And if there is drama, the drama comes to a point later in the session where I may have to point out, well, this is the vision that we discussed, and we're going to stick to that vision. And I insist that we're going to stick to that vision before we even start. And I get the agreement that we're going to stick with our visions. Because maybe we're wrong, but we're not going to be second guessing ourselves, and we're not going to be going back and redoing things, because that's really inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
Made a decision, we're going to make it, we're going to finish the record. And then if you don't want to put it on the album, fine. But at least we're going to stick with what we've planned.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, that's when you get into trouble.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it can be expensive creatively and financially.
Yeah. You got lots of money, you want to change your mind, fine. But if we've got X amount of my task, we're going to stick with the plan.
Yeah.
Have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. This one comes from Scratch Shack. This is kind of a workflow question. So he says, when working with a vocalist, do you like comping full takes, getting full verses first, then choruses, going line by line? What's the method that you find works best most of the time?
I comp as much as possible, but that doesn't mean that situations don't come up where it makes more sense to go line by line. It really depends. If some songs, it's very difficult for singers to make the transition from the verse to the chorus, which makes you wonder how the hell they're going to do it live. But if that's the case, then sometimes you got to do just the verses and then just the choruses, and there's not a whole lot of dogma when it comes to this stuff. I want performances as much as humanly possible, but if that's not working, that's not working. A lot of times songs are fairly new, and it can be difficult to make that transition because they haven't rehearsed it enough, which makes you wonder why they haven't rehearsed it before you sang, but okay. Sometimes I'll record 3 or 4 takes, usually 3, and then I'll make a comp and I'll let the artist listen to it, knowing that I don't got a take, because I need them to hear that they don't have a take as far as they're concerned. And I don't even tell them I don't have a take. I just play it for them, and they're like, I can do way better than that. All right, cool, let's do it. So they go in, they've basically gotten their input, and now they try again. I may give them some input. Sometimes I've had people, I remember one time I let the singer sing it like 6 times, and then he's like, are you going to give me any input? And I'm like, yeah. When you
Wait, it cut out. Do the so it cut out after. Are you going to give me input?
Aren't you going to give me any input? And I said, yeah, when you capture my attention. And that pissed him off. Special. And let me tell you something. I got a take. One
Nice.
take. He's like, oh, I'm not capturing your attention? Okay. Sometimes you got to piss people off to get them to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some genius about that sort of thing. Sometimes I do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer you do it, the better you get at it. And that's all you can do is try.
Right.
So there is no one way of doing it. It really depends on the situation.
Yeah, and the singer.
Singer. And listen, I'm going to give a lot of deference to what the singer wants. If I feel that they're holding themselves back by what they want to do, I'm going to say, listen, just do me a favor and pull yourself out of your comfort zone just for a little bit, because I think it will help you. And if it doesn't, then we'll go back. But I always show a lot of deference to my artists and my musicians on what makes them comfortable. And if I need to pull them out of comfort, then I talk them into doing it, and I ask their permission to do it. Because part of the trust is don't bring my record someplace that I'm going to be embarrassed about, as the artist is thinking that. So I need to be aware of that, and to really work with the artist so that they're always comfortable. I'm always monitoring how comfortable they are. And that's why I build my records with intent, because I tell my artists, if you're uncomfortable, I need to know that. If you're not liking what you're hearing, I need to tell me down the line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, tell me that immediately, because I need to ascertain what that is. Maybe you're absolutely right, and I'm missing the boat. Maybe I need to try something else. You know, I may be doing something for one reason. They don't like that. I could have 3 other ways of accomplishing the same thing that they do like.
Mm-hmm. Right. To keep communication open. Along the lines of keeping the artist comfortable, there's some stuff in the books about things that you would do, like I think you've referred to them as like vibe kits that you would do for the sessions. And
Vibe kits?
yeah, I think you talked about that, and it might have been in Daily Adventures, how you would set up little apartments for everybody.
Oh,
in the
that was
session.
that session. So we would, yeah. Well, if you're in a big room and you've got, you know, you're going to be there for a while, then you kind of want to make comfortable environments for your artists. So basically, if you know, an apartment, I put down a rug and then baffle it off, and then they'd get all their gear set up. So they had like this comfortable little space that was theirs in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And they were usually delineated by carpets and lava lamps and other things. And it just makes it kind of homey, and you want to spend a lot of time there. If you're going to spend a lot of time someplace, you want it to feel, you know, kind of warm and inviting.
Yeah.
So I always try and do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's little things like that, you know, can go overlooked in the producer's role, I think. So
Yeah,
it's
I
cool
think
to
that's
see your attention to it. Yeah. So another one from Joshua Hawksley, and he says, this is back to the guitar sims topic. With your guitar sims, do you commit to print them quickly, like you like the tone, or do you leave the sim active on the DI so you can continue to tweak it later?
Right. So the positive of guitar that the negative is I can change them anytime, right? So it's a completely valid question. Now, once I make a decision, I don't really change my mind usually, unless there's a problem. And if there's a problem, then we're, you know, all bets are off. But I don't actually commit my sims by printing them, because I have the discipline to commit them not printing them.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was the kind of person that didn't have that discipline, it'd probably be a good idea to print them.
Yeah.
And the thing is, because what is it? What did I want to say?
Something with commitment, perhaps.
Yeah, it's about the commit. Oh, yeah. The thing is, so even if I were to print to commit, right, it doesn't really make a difference because of my saving techniques. Mm. So every major session times for the day is saved. So when I'm ready to move on to guitars, I save it so that I have a new session. So I can get back to any stage. Mm-hmm. I can get back to my original vocal takes that are not comped if I need to, on an earlier session. This way I keep my sessions clean and not bogged down with all that crap, but I can get back if I have to. Right. So, you know, even if I were to do that, to print, I wouldn't really. I still need to maintain the discipline of not, you know, changing my mind on that sort of thing. Right. But I've been recording, you know, committing to tape for so long that that muscle is permanent. It's hard for me to do the other thing. Mm-hmm. I've trained myself to make a decision and to commit to that decision and to resist the temptation to change my mind, because as you get further along in the project, you have less clarity. Okay. So what are you going to change your mind on something a decision that you made when you had absolute clarity at a time when you're losing clarity? So basically I have to say to myself, you need to trust yourself, you need to trust your earlier decisions, and let's move forward. And that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Cool. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I'm thinking one more question, then we'll wrap up. Does that feel good?
Whatever you want. I'm good for however long you like.
Okay. All right. So how about this then? Let's say, guys, last chance to submit your questions, and I'm going to read off one from Jason Lackey right now. So now you have a little bit of time to think about one. So okay. So from Jason Lackey, describe your process for write. How much time do you devote to writing every day, and how do you balance that with your audio work?
Oh, there's no balancing writing a book with audio work. When I write a book, I take a hiatus. It's traumatic because, when you stop working, it takes a minute to get the engine going again. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm like really bad because I get so bogged down in the creative stuff that I don't do the business stuff. Like I should, like a month before I'm done writing, start actively pursuing the audio stuff again. But my process is, it takes me 3 months to write a book of that kind of length, which is 90. Those books are 90,000 words, a little over 90,000, all the Zen books. Musician Survival Guide, 108,000 or 106, something like that. Wow. Takes me a few months. I write almost every day, and I get thinking more, and then I'll take a few days off, and then I'll write every day. Mm-hmm. Writing, taking 2 days off from writing is just a disaster. It's so hard to get it ramped up again. But at the same time, there comes a point where I'm so exhausted from writing that my brain just, I have to take a break. So there's that constant battle. And I just write. I mean, it's just something that I'm able to do. I don't really understand how or why. Sometimes I look at it and go, how does that stuff all just come out of me? But it does. So that's what I do. And so then once I'm done writing, then I go back to doing, pursuing mixing and producing and whatever. And if I'm not pursuing gigs, they stop coming in. It's always been that way. You always have to be pursuing gigs, always. Mm-hmm. Looking for something, talking to people, making sure that you're in people's minds before they're ready to do their project, not after, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's great. When did you start writing?
I liked writing, in junior high and high school, and then I left and stopped. And then when I got to Usenet and I started posting as Mixerman, that's practice writing. And then when I started writing the Daily Adventures of Mixerman, that's pretty much when it started. And the funny thing is, even after all the edits, like the first chapter, when I posted that, I wrote in a different tense. It's written in first person now, but it wasn't written in first person on the first day. And it was edited to make it first person for the book. And for me, like, I read through that book and I can just plainly see my improvement as a writer. Like, right. It was like boot camp, that, writing every single day, an entire chapter, and watching the reactions and everything. That taught me a lot. But now I feel like I'm a much more refined writer 5 more books later. And, the interesting, I was saying to Tanya the other day, it's like, I was preparing the Daily Adventures of Mixerman, and so I'm reading it and I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, it's like that. That writing was so raw then. I don't know that I could even write like this at this point because it's unrefined. And I read it and I go, it's great. I'm happy with it, but it's not how, you start getting refined. You can't do the stuff that you did when you were young. It's the same with instruments, same with records. It's just this weird thing where you can never go back to that.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you're worse or whatever. You're better, but you're not. There was just something about that thing that it had. So.
Same Pharcyde record back in 91.
I don't know about that because all I did was record that album. But,
for vocals, yeah.
Do some of the mixes, I guess. I did mix like 4 of those songs, but whatever. It wasn't about that. Hip hop's so different. It's all about what they do.
Yeah.
I just made sure it got on the tape well, or in the DAW right, and you could hear everything and wasn't all distorted and whatever.
Handheld U47.
We did use a U47 on that, so there you go.
Yep. Okay, cool. So let's see. We got another one in from Stefan Wessel. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Eric, can you give any thoughts about the state of the music business and where you think it'll go in the next 10 years?
I don't know. First of all, there's a lot of things at play here. Trump is playing with China on the one hand, but on the other hand, and the farmers are the ones that are paying for it at the moment.
Sorry, it cut out on Trump is, and I cut out.
Oh, sorry. Trump is playing this trade game with China right now, and he's playing hardball with them. And the people that are paying for it at the moment are the farmers, but we may be the beneficiaries if he's successful with this. And I don't really agree with the way he's going about it, I'll be honest, but anytime you do anything, there's unintended consequences. And if China folds, then we have the negotiation power with them to get them to stop stealing our
Sorry, I did it again. Stop stealing our
intellectual property. Because China takes our intellectual property with impunity. They don't fucking care. So it's really a problem. We would all make a lot more money if we could make money off of what we're sending over to China in intellectual property. So right now it's the soybean makers and the car makers that are paying. Of course, it comes down to us as consumers, but if he's able to actually get them to fold, then it could have benefits for us. I don't really agree with much of what Trump does, and I don't even necessarily agree with what he's doing here, but I'm just saying that it could prove as a positive for us, as reckless as it is. It could also be a disaster. That's the problem with doing reckless things. So hopefully it's the first. As far as what the business is, 10. If people are actually able to make more money with their music on the streaming, well, it's going to become more independent, and that's not a bad thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I'm optimistic about where the business can go. It's going to regrow as something else. The major labels are never going to go away. You're going to need them. But that doesn't mean that you need them to make a good living in music. And that's, you did before and you have for many years, but now you can be a band. And look at Thievery Corporation or any of these circuit festival circuit bands. The festival circuit is huge. Yeah. If you on that and you can get a following and get onto that, you can make a really good living as an independent act that's not on a major. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for people, but as you are at your music, it's kind of sad. So, if you're going to be in a band, make sure one of your band members is a good marketing guy, or get a manager and make the manager a fifth of your band, but make sure that they're a great marketing guy, because that's critical. I'd rather work with I shouldn't say it like that, but I'd rather work with in terms of dollars and being able to make money down the road, I'd much rather work with an average band that's great at marketing than a great band that couldn't market themselves out of a paper bag, So that's just the sad reality.
Right. Okay. Willis Taylor, any good tips for live recording? Have you done much, live stuff, live concert recording?
Yeah, hire a good live recording guy, because I avoid those kinds of situations. I like control.
Yeah. how about, let's see if we rework the question a little bit. How do you like when you are recording, and let's say you have a live room? How do you go about isolation? Do you like having everybody in the same room? Any, even from a producer's perspective about keeping the energy or something like that. How do you approach that?
If I was working with a really great band that just played great, and I knew I wasn't going to have to do any, editing really per se, I could get takes, then I don't have to have absolute isolation. I could put everybody in a room. I don't do it very often. I have the skill set to do it because I've done it. I mean, it was part of my learning process, really, live to 2-track,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People don't really learn that today. And there's only one way to learn how to do that, and that's to do it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I could, but I generally don't. I prefer the control, and I try to build records with intent. And a lot of times I'm kind of helping to reveal who people are. And a lot of times I don't know, I'm not going to capture the whole thing at once. So I do isolations, and the guitars in a big ISO at Echo Mountain, and then the piano's at a big ISO with the organ. It's a really big ISO at Echo Mountain, and next to the control room, I usually have to put either the bass or the guitar, usually the bass, which sucks because you can kind of hear it, but whatever, it is what it is. So yeah, I tend to isolate. But if I literally could record a band live to 2-track, and they were the kind of band where we had the studio for 3 days and we were trying to capture a live album, then I would try and incorporate bleed into the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. When everybody's isolated, are they usually in the same room, or are you using like the radial SGI boxes and all that to keep the amps isolated, but everybody's staying in the same place? Or
well, let's see, the
vocalist
in the room with the drummer, the bass player would be in the room with the drummer. The keyboard player is tied down. So, but if I can.
Yeah.
Sometimes the guitar player wants to be right by his amp, but that doesn't really work when you're tracking because you need to be able to hear the drums.
Right.
So it's better if you're standing near the drums,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to give you guys time for one more question. And while we wait for something to come in, you said something a couple of times that I'd like to hear your expansion on, because it's a topic that comes up pretty often on these Q&A type sessions, and really in the videos that we do too. But you said that you make records with intent, and I think it's really easy to gloss over that sentence, but it's also extremely important. So I'd like to just have you expand on that a little bit.
So, making a record with intent is basically having a vision and building towards that vision, right? Now, that doesn't mean there's no experimentation. There can be experimentation, but the moment you find the thing that's working, then you go with that and you move forward and you build it. Because most of our records are built in the overdub process. Most people do not record a band all at once. For bands, and if you're an artist, then a lot of it's programmed, or if it's a band, then okay, you record that and then you're building your overdubs on that. So the overdub process is part of it. Mm-hmm. And so when you're making your decisions, you need to make your decisions with intent. So you decide that you need more internal rhythm, and you decide that you want to have a guitar part do this internal rhythm, right? Well, the rhythm is a musical function, but we also need to consider frequency. Because if there's a ton of information in the upper mid-range, then it doesn't make sense for the guitar player to be doing a high rhythmic part. If there's a glut in the mid-range, then the guitar player we to voice the guitar. We're evaluating not only our musical decisions but our frequency decisions based on the song and how we're reacting to it. And we're always monitoring how we're reacting to it and how everything is working together. And so by the time you're done your record, by the time you're done your last overdub, if you really build your record with intent, when you're done your last overdub, the record should be done. Like there shouldn't even necessarily have to be a mix process. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't want to spend an hour or two to clean it up and to give it a little love. That's fine. But this idea of like, okay, now I'm going to give it to someone and have them spend 6 to 12 hours mixing it, depending on you know, on how dense the production is, for kind of mixing it themselves. So I talk about building a record with intent because it makes your life easier when you're not a mixer.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a thing that's packed in the mid-range, upper mid-range, I can make it so that all that stuff works and so you can hear it. But, you know, I've been doing it a long time. If you're just new to this, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. Plus, the denser you make your album, the less low end, and low end is really big now and should be. And so building a record with intent is all about that. And that's what I recommend, and that's what I talk about, and that's explain how you do in the entirety of the book.
Yeah.
So the last thing I'll say on that, nothing is locked in stone until you put the record out. And so don't put the record out and then say, well, I didn't mean for that. No. If you put it on the record, it's intended to be on the record. If you sing flat and there's a clunker on there and you put the record out with that clunker on there, don't apologize for that clunker. You intended for it to be there. And that's a very important concept. Never apologize for your art. If you have to apologize for it, then fix it before you put it out.
Right. That's great. Yeah. Very good point. That's awesome. Cool. So there's, I've seen in one other spot, you've talked about when you get something to mix, for example, and they've got, you know, I'm forgetting the actual example, but, you know, one that I'll draw out is you've got like 3 mics on a guitar on one guitar part, and they're not balanced or whatever, or like you get a DI track for a guitar and there's no amp sim on it. That kind of stuff.
The first time I got a DI track without an amp sim, I don't remember what year it was, but it was probably early aughts, and I just mixed it with the DI. I had no idea. Why would you send me a DI? He's like, well, no, you're not going to put an amp sim on that? I'm like, an amp sim? Why are you not I'm supposed to understand that? So now, you know, after he explained that, then I understood when someone sends me that, then they're giving that decision to me, which is kind of odd, but okay.
It's also not with intent, right?
Say, could you at least send me what you've been listening to? Because I have some, because then I have no indicator of what you're thinking, you know? When I mix something, I'm going to mix it the way I hear it. But the thing is, I'm going to base it on what you've recorded. And if you give me no indicators, like guitar tone and the amount of distortion, then who knows whether I'm going to deliver something that makes you react. I don't know, because I don't know what you even like if you're not going to give me some kind of indication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah.
Just like the crazy, like distorted guitar or a mildly broken up one, and it would completely change the way that production makes you feel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's not always obvious. Sometimes it could be either.
And that's usually a product of not making a record with intent. Like you don't have an intention if you're sending it clean.
Not making a record with intent at all. There's no intent.
Yeah.
So now it's hit or miss. Are we going to come out with a great record or not? Hard to say. If the song's great, well.
Right. Yeah. That's another interesting point I've seen you write about too, is how great talent and a great song can do more than you can as an engineer for the overall effect of the record.
My job is 100% dependent upon the job of everyone before me.
Mm-hmm.
If the song's great and the performances are great, then I'm going to give you a great mix. Mm-hmm. If they're not, then I'm in damage control. I can only give you the best thing that I can. I'm going to bring it to its fullest potential, whatever that is.
Yeah.
You know, if its fullest potential is shit, then that's what you're getting. You know, which is why I try not to mix things that are going to come out shit. I mean, that's why I listen to everything before I agree to accept the gig. Because based on my work, not based on my time. I'm not interested in selling my time. I'm interested in selling my work.
Okay.
And so my mix, you're buying a mix, and my name is going on that, and other people will hire me based on that mix. And so it's important that I'm mixing songs that I think are good, because if I mix a song that's shit, then people are going to think I'm a shit mixer.
Mm-hmm.
And you got my duds out there. What are you going to do? You can't say no to. Sometimes you mix an album and there's a terrible song on it. What are you going to do? But
Mm-hmm.
you know, I want to maintain some control, and I don't want to spend time mixing something that's shit. So you know, I want to make sure it's a song. Now the bar for me accepting a mix is way lower than the bar on me accepting a production, because I have to absolutely adore it and adore you and adore, you know, to do it. But as a mixer, I just got to find some redeeming quality, you know?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of hard to find songs that have no redeeming quality. And when you do, you will have no idea how to mix it.
Right.
I know I can't. I think I'm just like, I don't even know what to do with this. No idea.
Right.
And send it back. That's why I listen to everything first.
Yeah. You made a really good point there. You're selling your work, not your time. And that's a good way to look at things, especially in our path, where so often we're billing by the hour.
Yeah, I've never really been. There's three ways to get paid in this business: for your time, for your work, or for your name.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm hired for my name. Usually I'm hired for my work. Chris Lord Algae, hired for his name. Sometimes they don't even give a crap. It doesn't matter. I did a mix. Ron Aniello wanted me to mix. He didn't like Brandon O'Brien's mix on something. Ron paid me to mix it, brought it to the A&R guy. The A&R guy says, yeah, that's great. We're putting Brandon's mix on the album. Rightly so, because Brandon was the name, and all they cared about was the name.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, you know, I'm not even saying that. It doesn't even matter whether my mix was better or worse. It makes no difference.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's better, it
Right.
So if you're hiring, you know, I had a debate with the guy who's like, I'd much rather get hired for my time. And I'm like, no, you actually wouldn't, because yes, if you're going to take your time and prorate it as work, then yes, but you get paid more for your work.
Right.
If someone hires me for my work, they're interested in my work. Therefore, I have more value. If you're paying me for my time, then you're only interested in my time, and my work has no value.
Right. Yeah, very good thought. Okay, so I've got 2 more questions. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's see. Let me pick which one to go with first. Okay. Actually, I think it's the same question from 2 different people. Interesting. Worded differently. We'll go with this one from moderator Mike. So his question is, what do you think your role would have been in the music industry 30 years ago, before it was as crazy spread out as today? Does it even exist?
30 years ago. I mean, I was in the business 30 years ago, sadly. Well, no, peripherally. I was learning. I was at Dimension Sound at that time. Would a book like this sell? No, there was no internet. No, it was so different, man. It's just not even. You listen to songs on the radio. People still listen to songs on the radio. That's how you found songs, and and you traded tapes, and you know, you listened with friends, and listening to records was an interactive process. You sat down and you listened to a record. Yeah, we had Walkman. We'd walk around listening to cassettes on our Walkman, but that was it. And now, you know, no, there would be no way to write a book at that time and have it catch on like that, because of the existence. Everything had to go through distribution channels, and now the internet's our distribution channel. So yeah.
Yeah. So
in fact, I just the right moment, because I don't think I could write that book now and have it take off the way it did.
Right.
Because I already wrote the book. But also, I mean, even if that book never existed, it's just a lot harder. You know, then everything was ripe. Everything was ripe for that. to work. The timing was just there. So in some ways, the timing was terrible because I couldn't really figure out a way to really profit off of it. In other ways, I don't think it would have happened any other time. So it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's a pretty interesting turn of events that made it all happen. It was like a perfect storm.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it's still, for me, it still holds up very much today. Like it was a blast listening to the audiobook for it too. So, yeah.
You know, the one thing that will never change is the mayhem that occurs when I
Sorry, cut out the
occurs from making art by committee, and you know, so in some ways that's when you make your own record. That's been like advised against for many years. Oh, you want a team of people, but there's advantages to making your own record if you're the kind of person that has the disciplines necessary to make your own record.
Yeah.
And those, you know, discipline is learned behavior. So if you decide you want to do something, you're going to have the discipline, you will have the discipline. And if you don't, and you can't, then you've defeated yourself already. So discipline, I have a lot of disciplines that I did not have when I was younger that I have now because I've developed them. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a negative to say that someone doesn't have the discipline, but you have to at least recognize that and operate within the realities of yourself. Right. You can't be operating it as your own worst enemy in the artistic process. And if you are, you need to figure.
And if you are, you need to
figure out a way around it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're all our worst enemies when it comes to art because we get self-doubt creeps in and you start to beat yourself up. And I don't know why we all do that, but we do. And so it's very important to really maintain a headspace of, a positive headspace. When I'm feeling down, I actually put on affirmations, 12 minutes of affirmations in the morning, mm-hmm. Where I use guided ones on YouTube. And, if I'm just like filled with self-doubt in the morning, I can completely just change my day and what's going to happen just by talking to myself and convincing myself. Everything is brainwashing. So you may as well brainwash yourself for positive things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good bit of advice there because it is very, very easy to get all of the self-doubt and everything, just like you said. Yeah. It's definitely a hard part of this.
Yourself and say, just trust yourself. Listen, your early are your learning process. So I recommend you make a record, you make it from start to finish with intent, you put it up, you check out what the reaction is. You get no reaction, try again. You start to get a little reaction, evaluate it. Put up another record, but make it start to finish. Don't put them away. Don't try and make 10. Make the record. Don't put such importance upon it that this is the song and it has to be perfect now. Bullshit. You put a record up and it's just a terrible recording and people start to love it. Well, then you've got an indication of a song that maybe is worth investing a little bit of money in. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the learning process is record to record to record to record. If you keep making the same song over and over and over again because you've got to get the record right, you are not going to learn how to make a record. So keep making different records. You will discover things about yourself. You'll get indications from people. And then once you start to hit on something where people go, yeah, I like this, and you can see the reaction. First of all, you'll probably be a lot better at recording. You'll probably be a lot better at making your records. And now it's worth building it and investing some money maybe in someone helping you to mix it, maybe mastering at some point. But until you get there, you just got to keep making records because it takes time and it takes practice. Yeah. But you'll get there, especially if you concentrate on the arrangement and you concentrate on the performances.
Right. Yeah.
And you'll record great songs.
Right. Yeah. Little thing called the song. So a little bit of a different spin on that question was from Stephen again, or I'm sorry, from Stefan Wells. He says, is there it's a little bit looking at regret, but is there anything that you would not do the same way if you could go back 20 years in your career?
No.
Yeah.
No, because that's the whole thing about it. Here's the beauty about making a record with intent. If you decide that everything you've done is as you intended and you're good with it, then you're good with it. If you never put out something that you're not good with, then that's that. Now, sometimes I got to put it out that I'm not good with, whatever, but I don't regret that because there's other I understand that there's politics involved and there's other people involved and my picture's not on the cover. But to regret an artistic decision is to make an artistic decision that doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then no one heard it, so who cares? So no, there's no regret. Listen, if I put out a record and it's just an abomination to me, but it sells millions of copies and people love the record, I'm putting it on my
Wait, I'm putting it on my
discography, and I'm going to tell the entire world that I did it. Everybody I can find, I'm going to tell I did that record, even though I think it's the worst thing that I've ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Because all that matters is the reaction. Oh, that's a hit. I want to work with him. There have been abomination records, careers that I can't even understand how they got started just because of a hit.
Right. Yeah.
That's it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
A hit is a massive reaction to a record. People would ask for my reel. We're thinking about hiring you. Can you send us your reel? And I'd go and I'd find my best mixes, the things that I made the greatest thing ever, right? And then I started to realize that the reaction was to the songs that were known. And so I'm like, why am I putting these things on? Nobody ever says anything about them. All I ever hear was, yeah, I hired you because of this. Right. So I put on the songs that are known. That's it. Yeah. Didn't matter. Even if it was completely outside their genre. Someone would send me a thing. I'd purposely put songs that were completely outside their genre because what I noticed was if I put anything that was even remotely close to what they are, they'd get nervous that I was going to make them sound like that. But if I far away from what they are, they'd be like, this is great. These are great songs. This guy knows what he's doing. And I'd get the gig.
Right. Wow. Interesting how you see those things develop over time too, right? Like you start learning the idiosyncrasies of sending people your reel and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Facebook advertising, We're doing the targeting. You do micro changes to it and you it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Only
longer. Yeah. Right. Nice. Okay. Cool. I think that does it for our questions from the live room as being sent to me. Let's see. So you've done Bobby Ozinski's podcast, which highly recommend anybody watching. And I want to do a little bit of a spin on the question that he asked at the end. So I'm going to steal this from Bobby a little bit. He always asks if there's one piece of business advice that you could give to everybody, what would it be? I'm going to change it a little bit. And in the theme of your book, if you had one piece of advice, maybe that you haven't already given on this show, but for people, musicians struggling to make a killer record, what would it be?
It's funny because when Bobby asked me that question, I answered it, and he wrote me like a month or two later and said, I want to put that answer in my book, my newest book. And it's actually in his newest book. I was talking, and really that's probably the best advice that I can give is about positioning. And positioning is very simply, it's all businesses market based on a position. Volvo sells you cars that keep you safe. BMW sells you a sporty luxury car. Lexus is a luxury car. Okay. And so, they all have their position. Well, we have positions too. I position myself as a mixer who you hire for his work, right? Mm-hmm. Some things we have control over, some things we don't, but we have a position, no matter what that is. You decide that you are going to learn how to grid drums and become the best at that, well, guess what you're going to be doing for years to come is you're going to be working with bands that need the drums gridded, because they're the bands that need that are going to hear what you've done and they're going to go, oh, that's the guy you want to do in life. Then I would recommend that you don't become very good at that.
Right.
And you become things that you want to do, because that is what's going to dictate your position. So part of dictating your position has to do with attitude and deciding that this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to be and this is what and so then you only accept the gigs that work towards that. And part of it kind of happens over time, a little bit outside your control, but you can keep influence over it. And so I would say, as an artist, all artists have a position. They figure out who they are. They figure out what they're good at. They start to attract people that like that. Well, you better operate within your position as an artist. Otherwise, what are you? You're not going to be happy with what you do. So if you want to be happy in life, do what you want to do. Don't do what you think you have to do. Do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Become what you want to become. And so best business, because we all have to make money, but it's more important to be happy. So there's a lot of ways to make money and be happy at the same time. So there's no time to make money and be unhappy with your life. Mm-hmm. But you have control over that. And if you find yourself doing things that you're unhappy with, then stop doing them.
Right. Yeah, it's a great answer. It's a really good answer. Awesome. Well, that's great. Sorry, somebody asked in the chat what the name of the podcast was. That's it's Bobby Ozinski's Inner Circle, I believe, is the name of that show. Yeah. So one more time, Eric's new book is The Musician Survival Guide to a Killer Record on Amazon. Eric, where else can people find you? What's your URL?
I post my blog on mixerman.net. That will take you directly to my blog. I have a forum, a Facebook group called Mixermania. You're welcome to join that. I used to have the forums. It's just too much work and it's too much. I couldn't be on there enough, and so the Facebook thing is just easy and it's fun, and all my friends are there, and so post anything, say hello. I'm on Twitter at Mixerman. I'm on Instagram at #_Mixerman.
Nice.
Really good. YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. You search Mixerman, YouTube/Mixerman. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's probably not the YouTube channel. Just search Mixerman on YouTube and you'll get my channel. That's it. And then my website for the Mixerman Live page, I'll be putting up a page. And basically, if for years people wanted me to go to bookstores, and I'm like, I just couldn't understand how that was going to work. Now, the Greensboro one where I went to, it was a studio, and the guy was tapped into the community. So if you're in a city and you have lots of friends in the musician and recording community, and you've got a space, or someone with a space, then this works, and I can set up a time to come out to your city and whatever and do that. And like I said, I'm doing these in legs, so we'll figure it out, and it'll be months in advance. But it is a requirement that I get someone in a place that can help me set it up, because otherwise, what am I going there for? So I need that assistance.
Cool. And people can reach out to you through your website for that?
Yeah, Facebook, you can PM me. You can, the contact form goes right, email at mixerman.net.
More time on the email, it cut out again.
Mixerman@mixerman.net.
Easy to remember.
Cool. I don't know what it is with the cutting off. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's my Skype thing. I think Skype falls behind and then it wants to catch up.
Right. Yeah. That's what it seems like it's doing. Yeah. So sorry everybody for the glitches. The internet is a crazy thing. Cool. Well, I think that it about wraps it up. Eric, thank you for, giving us your time and all of your knowledge.
My pleasure.
Books.
I'm mad I didn't go as long as Brian Lucy, though.
He hit a record.
We'll let him
Yeah.
keep it. It's all right.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Yeah, I really
Cool.
appreciate it. And I don't know how many people are watching or will watch, but
Yeah.
thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks a lot, Eric.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Mark.